I mentioned this a couple times. I visited Gettysburg, read a whole bunch of plaques. And actually, I mean, for people who don't know the area, where we are with Harper's Ferry, with Antietam, we ride our bikes to Antietam battlefield for like coffee. It's really crazy to like, you know, growing up in Chicago, not seeing this stuff. And everywhere you go, there's like these historical plaques they have explaining what happened there, and there's cannons everywhere. Yeah. And then I watched this documentary, and I thought to myself, if the Republicans, that abortion is very much the same on the same moral level as slavery. It's not necessarily, you know, I know there could be arguments on one being worse than the other. I'm not saying that. I'm saying as an issue of moral conflict, I think that it is very likely the Republicans do ban abortion. It does cause a dramatic escalation. And I do think that abortion, if we are to follow the historical track in human rights expansion, abortion will be outright banned. It will be abolished completely. And then we will look back on whatever civil war happens because of it, assuming it does, the same way we look at slavery. That is not an opinion personally about pro-choice or pro-life. It's an opinion about historical track records.
But do you really think that like women are the people that care about the abortions? Do you think that there would be a civil war over abortion? I don't. Like, what woman is going to get out there and go in the streets and fight?
This is exactly the point. People don't know enough about the Civil War, neither do I. When I actually went to Gettysburg for the first time, and in fact, living out here, talked to a lot of people, met people out here who've told me stories, went up to Gettysburg and then actually read everything and talked to a few people. Then I watched this documentary. I was like, wow, what percentage of people in the United States owned slaves at the time of the Civil War? I think it was 5%. So if you came out and said, come on, slave owners, you think there's going to be a fight, a civil war over slavery when the Confederacy is 4 million white population and only 25% own slaves? That's only 5% of the entire country.
But that was also tied up in male ego in that, like, hey, this is our state, or this is what we believe in, whatever. When it comes to abortion, it's a female. That's why when Roe v. Wade...
A lot of people are in the chat disagreeing, saying men care.
But hold on. We're divided by states right now. Some states are banning, some states are enshrining. No, but that's not what
I'm saying. Didn't you notice that when Roe v. Wade was overturned, we had no riots? None. Where were the riots? They just automatically disappeared, right? It's supposed to be one of the hottest issues there, and we had 0 riots. People prepared for them. People did everything. Nope. But when George Floyd gets killed or whatever, it has to. Men are not going to go out and fight so that you can. So that women.
I'm telling you, you got to read more about the Civil War in that case.
Because I see what you're saying, but the comparison
is that the average Southerner went out and grabbed a gun saying slavery, hoo-ha. The government of the Confederacy was trying to enshrine slavery for sure, but the average Southerner that was fighting was not a slave owner.
But it wasn't a woman's issue. They don't care. Men are not going to get up and fight over a woman's issue.
Because abortion is primarily about women being sexually available for men.
But also,
that's why a lot of men don't care about
this is a moral issue of human rights.
No, I agree that it's a moral issue of human rights, but men are not going to be like driven to the streets and like they were not rioting in the streets when Roe v. Wade was overturned.
I mean, I didn't even see women rioting in the streets. Not like it's in their nature anyway, but they couldn't get much done if they tried.
There's not going to, I just don't, from what
I saw them dressing up like The Handmaid's Tale.
Yeah, that's what they do, and they go and shout.
Playing pretend. True. I saw them doing that, seeking attention, but nothing, there was no destruction.
Seamus made this point several times. He said that in U.S. history, there has never been a conflict seeking to guarantee human rights that has gone towards stripping them away in the long run, right? It's basically, as we've moved forward as a nation and progressed, we've continually expanded human rights, not rescinded them. The argument that it's women's rights to choose it's the same as arguing, in my opinion, that a slave owner has a right over someone else's body. Granted, there's a difference between an unborn fetus and a human beings who are being owned. I think slavery is very, very obviously wrong, and I think we came out on the right side of that one historically. But the argument that someone has a right to choose to terminate someone else's life it's a very, very bad thing. Now, for me, I fall in the more libertarian camp of I also don't like the idea of the government coming in and determining someone has to give their body to somebody else, which makes it an impossible ethical standard that I'm not going to pretend to have the answers to. Because I don't know.
It's a body inside a body. It's two separate bodies,
you have two bodies,
DNAs,
and so you're trying to argue about civil rights. But the way Seamus put it, many other pro-lifers, is that the temporary displacement of the woman's, the woman's life for the permanent life of the baby is the proper outcome. Meaning, killing the life of the baby to help the woman, to save the woman 9 to 10 months of suffering is unequivocal. Or you know what I'm trying to say?
It doesn't balance out.
Right. They're arguing that it's unfortunate the woman has to suffer, but the baby gets to live a full life of 70 to 80 years, whereas you can kill a baby with no life just so the woman doesn't have to go through 10 months or so.
9 months of
well, I say 10 because there's before and there's afterwards, there's postpartum and there's things like that. So there's going to be this period for women. But anyway, look, my political opinion is not, and it's funny that I can say this because, like, imagine being in the time of slavery and being like trying to be a centrist where you're like, well, you know, I personally think it's wrong, but I'm not going to abolish it. I understand the position I'm in, especially historically, but just reading about the Civil War, reading about how no one cared about it. Like, this is the crazy thing. The abolitionists were extremists. They were a small, tiny faction no one cared about. Mm-hmm. And it was like 5% of the country that actually had slaves. And so it was rich, white Southern slave owners that made up, it was about 25% of the Southern population, which ultimately, because it's a small population, and most people didn't care. I was watching a video talking about the politics, the papers, the propaganda, and it was like people in the North didn't care for war. Here's a really great example. The Emancipation Proclamation didn't actually abolish slavery in like 3 states. Only the states that were in rebellion against the Union. And so Lincoln was actually promising like Maryland and I think Missouri the right to keep slaves because they weren't rebelling against the Union.
Didn't Lincoln also want the repatriation of former slaves?
What do you mean?
Like, he wanted African slaves to be repatriated to their home countries.
Liberia?
Yeah.
I'm not
not just Liberia, but like...
No, there was a thing that they would send groups of them back over to Africa and repatriate them.
But anyway,
yeah,
are you
right.
Are you suggesting though that a civil war kicked off by a federal decision on abortion would maybe be more destructive to the country because abortion affects more people than slavery ever did?
No. What I'm saying is people are saying right now abortion can't, like, there's not gonna be a civil war over abortion. Like, nobody cares that much. It's like, okay, go read the history of the Civil War and see how many people cared about that issue.
Nobody cared about that yet.
There were a lot of people. Hans Christian Heg, we talked a bit about him because he was a foreigner who fought and died for the Union. Abolitionists were real. John Brown was real. Depending on your perspective on history, he was either a hero or he was a terrorist. I mean, these are crazy stories. You think about, I want you to imagine this. A guy goes to, gets a bunch of his kids and his friends and family and gets guns and goes to an abortion clinic, walks right up to the doctor and blows his head off. That's John Brown. Was John Brown a hero because he was doing that to slave owners? He walked. There's a story about how he went to. He was. I think it was in Kansas. He didn't care to ask any questions. He didn't care to take prisoners. He just went up and started killing these people, and he's considered a hero because slavery was so wrong. What I'm saying is, at the time, people in the North didn't care because the North, like, it was a political issue for sure, but people in the North were like, hey, look. First of all, segregation lasted until the 50s. So you need to understand that even in the North, people were very racist and were for segregation and didn't care for doing more. Lynchings persisted until the 1900s. This idea that the North were like great heroes of equality is just not true. My point is look, I watched a documentary on Civil War, so here I'm talking about it. No, I'm thinking that what the Republic, we're looking at states separate staunchly on abortion. Colorado, no limits. Texas, bans. We're seeing these states light up in this way, and I'm just like, man, if the Republicans move in that direction, it's not, I think people underestimate how politics works.
I would say it could be just like slavery was, some like tip of the iceberg or tilt the scales type of issue. It's not going to be like a driving factor that sets it off. There may be some power dynamics. There may be some other stuff going off.
And that's exactly fine. Right. So there's a lot of stuff that I've been reading about the Civil War quite a bit. Then going to Gettysburg got me to read a bit more and watch this documentary. And the Confederacy was definitely trying to enshrine slavery. The vice president overtly expressed white supremacy as the core, as one of the cores of the Confederacy, like literally expressing his genetic superiority and a bunch of other stupid nonsense. But for the average person in the South, they weren't fighting a war because they had slaves, because they didn't. So what a lot of people were telling me is the South, knowing that, they needed to boost morale by creating other issues. by highlighting other eccentricities of the federal government, presenting conspiracies and things like that.
Robert E. Lee didn't even own slaves and didn't believe in slavery, right?
So here's what ends up happening with the battle at Fort Sumter. It's the fighting that breaks out was not because the North was like, we must march on the South to end slavery. It was 2 years after the start, Abraham Lincoln signs the Emancipation Proclamation, which explicitly said only in rebelling states. So even then, they weren't trying to end it. So it was the start. It was the core, principal reason for the conflict and the paranoia between the South and the North. But the fighting itself was just like tribal hatred, and that was its underpinning
production
issue.
too, right? Like the whole reason that the North won was because they held all the means of production, which is what always scares me.
Manufacturing.
Manufacturing, right?
And it's held by the right now.
Yeah.
I thought China is holding the.
Well, that's what I was just going to say. I was going to say that is always my thing, and I was like, did we not learn anything from the Civil War? Who wins the war? The people with the means of production, and that goes for antibiotics, that goes for steel production, neon, all the things.
Let me tell you some more stuff that'll freak you out a little bit. A lot of people say, Bill Maher, he says, if there's another civil war, or there can't be another civil war because the Mason-Dixon line would go through Nana's kitchen. It's like, okay, Bill, we get it. You're snide. But anyway, I think it was Robert E. Lee, or I think it was Lee. And these were Union generals. And the question of secession was coming up, and they said, who do you side with? What am I supposed to do? And I think it was Lee who said he could not envision raising his arms against his home state. So ultimately he said, I have to go to the South.
Against Virginia, right?
Yeah.
Against Virginia.
Correct.
So I want you to imagine California and what would happen with the National Guard if California says outright, any child can get a sex change, any woman can get an abortion no matter what. And then the National Guard says, are we going to uphold this? It's clearly in violation of federal law. I mean, President DeSantis has already banned this federally, and now we're forced to uphold it. It's a question for each and every one of these National Guardsmen. You live in California. Your friends are in California. Your mom's in California. Your dad's there. Your shopkeeper. You know the local town councilman. Do you raise your arms against them?
We don't have. It's not against them. We don't have the same loyalty to where we come from anymore at all. That's all gone.
It's not about the state. It's about your friends and family in that state, and whether you're going to be the one rounding them up and locking them in camps as dissenters, or going to be the one defending them.
Yeah, I just
if the Union soldiers were to march on Virginia and go and occupy those towns, would you be the one pointing the gun at your friends and family, or would you be the one defending them?
I mean, how much people have like family that like they're that much? I just don't think that your families are spread out as much as you think they are. Like it's not going to be like, I've got my mom in Pennsylvania and my brother and. I mean, my mom in New Jersey and my brother in Pennsylvania, and like I have to pick. It's going to be like, hey, you guys come with me. We're going to be on the right side of history. We all have our political values that are exactly the same, and we're on a team.
But no one's thinking that.
But
no one's thinking that. It's you being ordered to march into your old neighborhood and tell everyone to stay in their houses while you're holding a rifle, and them being like, get out of here. We've said no to you.
I could do that if it was ideologically aligned.
So we had John Podesta doing that war game in 2020, where I think it was Podesta. You had the Democrats and neocon Republicans basically playing Dungeons and Dragons for politics. And the Democrats advocated in their scenario for the West Coast to secede from the Union if Donald Trump were to win a second term as president. The federal government then says, we are giving explicit orders to the National Guard to go out and stop these people from doing it. And then you have to ask yourself, are you going to protect your family or protect the federal government? That's what Robert E. Lee was basically saying. It's not a question of being like, the word Virginia means so much to me, and the word United States does too, but I was born in Virginia, so I choose that word. No, it's like, yo, I'm not going to point a gun at my neighbor Bill.
Yeah.
Like, get out of here. You're not marching on my hometown. It's not going to happen.
You know what's interesting about this whole thing? It's funny because I feel like if California wanted to secede, we'd allow that. But like, I always feel like the left would never let us go. Like they would never let the right secede. Like we would say, all right, you want to go? You want to have California? Go have California. And they would be like, no, you can't go if Texas wanted to secede.
Well, I'll give you the shout out, Luke, on this one, because you keep talking about peaceful divorce, right? Mm-hmm.
There's no such thing.
And that's exactly what the South was saying. An amicable split. And the North said,
we won't let you leave. Right. Like, we
Never.
won't let you leave. And I think that that's akin to the left now and the right. Like, if the right all said, okay, we're tired of your weird policies. You have this half in Canada and we'll have the bottom half, they would be like, no, you're never leaving. And then once they see that it's great down here, they would come over and invade us anyway.
What was that YouTube channel I mentioned earlier?
What if all history?
What if all history?
Yeah.
He basically said in his video that the right is basically guaranteed to win in all aspects. Military training, resources, food production, hands down, no questions asked.
Capability in general.
The entirety of rural America is connected, and the leftist America is islands. It's what do they call it? The Democrat archipelago?
Something like that. I mean, he made the point that it's the coastal elite, basically a similar point to that. But it's true. All the production, be it manufacturing, be it food growth, et cetera, occurs in the center of the country, and then everything else goes out to the coasts.
We still have manufacturing?
We have a little bit.
Marginally.
I don't. Yeah, it's not that significant. A lot of the stuff is just imported because of globalization policies instituted by David Rockefeller. But at the end of the day, it's a hard thing to really talk about, because how do you fix this larger divide that's getting farther and farther from each other? How do you fix people that are becoming more violent against each other for their political ideas? How can you even have a peaceful divorce? How can you have a divorce maybe that even has a mutual peace pact or a mutual defense pact? Is that possible? But it's a hard question to kind of lay out there. Yeah.
It's never been solved.
I don't think it can be solved.
I'm in Gettysburg, and you know what all these people up there are telling me? They give tours and stuff. They said, well, the Civil War was unfinished business from the Revolution, from the War for Independence, from the colonial days. And I'm like, And so what you're basically saying is that all of these major issues that have been affecting the country, they all connect all the way back. It just goes on forever. So you get Civil War, you get Reconstruction. I was reading that there's not even an official date to the end of the Civil War, because some Confederate soldiers kept fighting even though there was the Appomattox surrender. Then you had Reconstruction. Then you had this council hearing. It was like 1876, I think, where there was contested election. So they just had a committee meeting of like, okay, I guess we'll just decide you'll be president so we don't go to Civil War again. But then you end up with the Klan. Nathan Bedford Forrest, was he a general in the Civil War, or he was an officer?
A general, I believe.
And
that's
then
Forrest Gump was named after him, technically, that one. Forrest, yeah.
Then you get the Klan, then you get civil rights, and you get all that conflict. And now we're still dealing with remnants of all of that, and fighting is coming out. Granted, a lot of it's washed away. Almost everyone universally in this country opposes racism to a great degree. There's small factions that are still in favor of it. The left seems to be the most in favor, so it's getting weird and murky.
Yeah, I think the best thing we could strive to do is reduce harm any way we can. This is why I kind of advocate for a peaceful divorce, or even just trying to work it out where we don't have a strong federal government that keeps imposing its ideas onto everyone. And I think the more we allow choice, the more we try to get rid of a centralized big federal government that could be Republican or Democrat pushing the ideas onto different states, I think the better off we would be, and the less harm and the less conflict we would have.
I totally disagree. I feel like that's not like a reality situation. I think that there's cycles to every government. There's rise and falls, and there's war, and that is a part of being human, is these cycles of government and control and power, and that we are at a point where it's going to come to a head. There's going to be a fight for whatever is right, and then the cycle will start over again. And I'm like, let's just get there.
I'm not saying you're wrong, but I think we should try to avoid getting there. I think we shouldn't be racing there, because when Americans start fighting Americans, that's really going to be extremely dangerous and harmful to everyone. And I think we should be doing our best to reduce harm.
In that YouTube video I keep referencing, from What If All History, right?
Yeah, What If All History.
He mentions Strauss-Howe generational theory, and he actually expands upon it, that it's not just in the United States, but in the English-speaking world every 80 years of the conflict. And he mentions a couple more before the American War for Independence. And then he also mentions, I think, 3 other books that have, this is really fascinating. He goes through a bunch of different theories that all talk about the past and the ebb and flow of civilization and chaos.
Yeah, great videos.
And they all say in the 2020s, we're going to have chaos. And then you have MIT, I believe, who came out and said in the 2020s, they said, what is it? It was like in the 80s, and then 40 years, we're going to see major chaos and strife in the United States. So they're all predicting it. Maybe they're all wrong, and I won't need to eat the beans in my basement.
I don't know if they're all wrong, but I will say that if you look at cycles and trends of civilization and when they fall, it's always with the loosening of sexuality, especially when it comes to women.
Well, civilizations usually
Yes.
have that correlation, as well as the degradation of society, entertainment. A lot of it is just weird, awkward, doesn't make a lot of sense. And I think we are in that phase.
Yeah,
that
because-
fourth turning, as some people reference
Yeah.
it.
There's that thought. I was just reading that book. What was it? The Age of Enlightenment, right? Entitlement. The Age of Entitlement. Oh, I keep doing this with the mic. Okay, so the Age of Entitlement. And he says in there, like, there is always a battle of like your personal need for flexibility and sexuality versus the structural need for survival and constraints on your sexuality. And that's like what the story of Romeo and Juliet was, and that there's always that conflict. And when the individual wins out, and that's when society really deteriorates, because you're missing that construction of the family and restraint that you need in order to live in civil society. And so it's really women burning their bras in their 60s that ruined everything for us. But
It's not just in the 60s, though, because feminism started way before that.
I know. But
It
it's
was a
started
big
with, like,
movement. That was
witchcraft in the 19th century, really.
Like, you
And
mean
then you
like
can
women
blame-
learning math?
I mean, ultimately, we can blame the printing press for
yeah.
everything.
Oh, yeah. That's
For
right.
everything that's gone wrong.
How do you create a society where people are free as individuals to live and choose as they see fit?
I don't think you should.
have less and less government. Have less people
know.
dependent on government. People dependent on government stay dependent on government because it hooks them in. The government there is not there to solve any problems.
But-
it's there to get people who will need them
Right,
forever.
but I'm talking about culturally. You think women should be.
I've definitely made a further like turn, I guess within the last like years, maybe 2 years or so, further to the right, in that there's another good book that I'll quote, Sariba Mari's book, and he said this great little like anecdotal thing. And I have kids, so I know. So you bring two kids to the sandbox, they're like 18 months old. One kid brings a toy, they're both sitting in the sandbox. The other kid steals the toy from the kid, and the kid says, "Hey, that's mine, you can't have that," and starts freaking out, right? So that gives you a thing that's not like taught in society. There's an inherent sense of justice and right and wrong and morality, but a mom comes in, or or a dad or somebody comes in and says, "Yo, we don't live like that. We live in civil society, and this is how." So while I think that you need to embrace the individual and give them some flexibility and some freedom to grow there, I do think that there needs to be some agreed upon, very, moral structure there. And I think that we've gone past that, and everybody has all these like dark images about like authoritarianism and things like that because we've seen it get out of control. But there's also been a lot of benevolent dictators. There's also been kings that have wound up accruing sainthood because they were so good to their people. And so I just think that we are so lacking in morality that there needs to be not everybody is capable of. I mean, look around. Like, look at the supermarket. People aren't capable of making their own decisions on what food to buy. I think that there just needs to be some structure in the society, and it needs to be something we all agree on, and we are far past agreeing.
That's not a right or left thing. I mean, Bloomberg said we should tax the poor because they're too stupid to make their own decisions. He said, well, when we tax them, we can spend the money better because they tend to make mistakes.
No.
Something like that.
Do they mean the poor, or do they mean the middle class?
He meant he meant
I'm not
anyone who wasn't
talking
rich, I
about
guess.
personal decisions like that much. I mean some more enforced morality. Some, like we used to shame people. We used to, scoff against divorce. We used to, and people have like totally exploited all that. It used to be for some basic reason, like some serious reasons, that people get divorced or leave their family or anything like that, or men would go outside the home or
No
whatever.
fault divorce was the end of marriage
Reagan.
entirely. Completely 100% marriage no longer exists with no fault divorce.
Everybody lifts up Reagan, right? But Reagan was
was
the
awful.
one.
Gun
Yes.
control.
I had Reagan.
I mean,
Some, I think some
Iran
of us,
Contra, horrible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Horrible guy.
I mean, I'm just saying that, like, I think that there needs to be some bounded morality, and I think that, that sounds scary to a lot of people, but I think that it's the only way out of this.
Thanks for checking out this segment from the Timcast IRL podcast. But if you want to check out the full show live, tune in Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. And if you want more special access content, head over to timcast.com and become a member. Your membership helps sustain this company, keep our journalists employed, makes this show happen, and you will get access to exclusive members-only segments of the Timcast IRL podcast, and there's a massive library to check out. So again, go to timcast.com or tune in Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. and we'll see you all there.